Please welcome Aaron Sorkin to the show. Thank you.
Good to be here.
Are you, I was kind of watching you out of the corner of my eye as you were watching the clip roll. Are you really proud of this show?
I couldn't be more proud. I'm proud of the show, and I get to work with really some phenomenal people. You just saw two of them, Martin Sheen and Dulé Hill.
Yeah.
And there are 100 more behind them where they came from. I sprint to work every morning. I couldn't be more proud.
What is the process of writing for this show like?
The process of writing this show is fueled mostly by terror. In television, in episodic television, there's a very hard deadline. You know, when I write a movie, I have the luxury of calling the studio and saying, listen, it's not really coming to me. I'm going to need another 3 months. I'm having trouble with it. You don't get to do that in television. I don't need to tell you that if you don't have the show, there's just an hour of dead air Wednesday nights at 9 o'clock on NBC. So there's a very hard deadline. You will just kind of pace around your office for a couple of days. You'll be terrified. You'll have to sit down. You'll have to start writing something. I also work with a staff, really a terrific staff, and we sit in a room. We bat around ideas. I get them fighting with each other on a subject, and together we kind of we arrive at an episode and we find our way through it.
See, that must be great to actually have everyone in the room fighting about things, because then you get real life issues.
Absolutely. We live on, I should tell you, first of all, we have at the West Wing, we have three terrific political consultants. Dee Dee Myers, who used to be Bill Clinton's press secretary, his first press secretary. Pat Caddell, who at the age of 26 was running Jimmy Carter's campaign. He was Jimmy Carter's pollster. And Lawrence O'Donnell, who was Daniel Patrick Moynihan's chief of staff, the chief of staff of the Senate Finance Committee. And usually if I can kind of throw some red meat on the table and get the three of them fighting with each other, some piece of an episode is going to come out of that.
That's interesting. Has there ever been a time in which the writers on the show came up with something that these three consultants from their real life experience said, that's absolutely something you cannot do on this show?
Well, you know, there was an interesting thing with Dee Dee, who I don't want to embarrass because I love her so much. She's fantastic. But we did an episode early on in the season about something called a nuclear lifeboat card. One of the characters, played by Brad Whitford, the character Josh Lyman, was given a little card about the size of a bus pass. This was from the National Security Council. It had instructions on it, what he should do, where he should go in the event of a nuclear attack. In other words, he was going to be one of the people saved down in the bunker with the president, presumably fighting a nuclear war with the president. And Dee Dee had come to me and said, Aaron, you know, there is no such card, and it simply turned out that Dee Dee wasn't given one when she was at the White House, and it was a horrifying moment. But what will happen more often with these guys is, you know, I'll ask them to take adversarial positions. Those three people, and frankly everybody else on the staff as well, pretty much has the same political or ideological bent, which is to the left. And
to the left.
Yeah. And you know, you want the most interesting drama comes from two smart people disagreeing with each other. So I will ask one of them, I'll beg one of them, don't tell me what you think. Tell me what the really smart person in the room who disagrees with you thinks. And write me a 2-page memo on sort of the other side of school vouchers, the other side of proportional response, the other side of the census, that kind of thing. They'll put on another hat, they'll play devil's advocate. And I'll kind of distribute the memo that they wrote. 19 people will rush into their office with torches saying, how could you possibly think this? I go, I was just doing what Aaron told me to do.
A 2-page memo. That must come from being married to an attorney.
That's right. I'm very big on 2-page memos. I like, if I could live my life in 2-page memos,
I graduated from law school, and when I was looking at your bio, I was like, oh my God, he's married to an attorney.
I'm not only married to an attorney, I'm married to, the woman I married was the business affairs attorney at the movie studio that made the 3 movies that I was making. It was fundamentally her job to see to it that I was paid as little money as possible. Something I reminded her of when we were shopping for a house.
Yeah.
You like that house? You want to live there? You can't. You know why?
You would. Because of the deal that you're thinking
exactly
of
right. Remember the back end you didn't give me on the American President? Right there. Can't buy that house.
There's no conflict of interest there.
No.
I got to tell you, The American President was one of my favorite films because of the fact that it was set against politics, but it was really a love story.
Yeah.
At least that's, I'm sure, the way that all women view the film.
No, there's no doubt about it. It was Cinderella. It was a romantic comedy inside the White House.
Completely Cinderella.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've done something that I find a little intriguing on The West Wing, and you sort of have an interracial relationship going on. But you have an interesting story about that. Like, did you set out to have an interracial relationship, or did you set out with a different goal, and it just so happened that there's a black man and a white woman involved in this?
I almost always set out with a different goal than the one you achieve, but I think setting a goal at all is what makes it kind of get out of the chair and do something. The only time I've ever known anything in advance about what was going to happen on The West Wing, the only time I haven't really just made it up as I've gone along, is what just happened in the season finale a few weeks ago, which is a shooting at our entire cast as they leave a building after a speech. And I wanted that shooting to actually not be, I don't want to give away too much of what's going to open up this season, but I wanted that shooting to be a result of white supremacists angry that the white daughter of the president was dating a young African-American man. And it's the only thing on The West Wing that I've known that I was going to do for a while. I must tell you, it never occurred to me that anyone in this country other than white supremacists would have any problem with that interracial relationship. And I have to report to you that's not the case. We've gotten some terribly ugly mail at the show.
In the year 2000?
In the year 2000. I think that the law of large numbers tells us that when 15 million people are watching something, several of them are going to be crazy. I think I've gotten some of those. And what amazes me, given the content of these letters, is that these same people know how to address an envelope and lick a stamp.
Wow. That's wow.
Yeah. But those two actors, by the way, Dulé Hill and Elizabeth Moss, who play Charlie and Zoe, are wonderful, and I can assure all of their fans they'll be back next year. They're fine.
Okay. Are they still going to be in love?
They'll be in love, and when they look, I'm sure they're going to break up and come back together and break up and come back together, and it will be for a variety of reasons, probably few of them having to do with skin color, and most of them having to do with the same reason anybody breaks up and gets back together.
As far as
they're young and they're dumb.
Yeah, right. As far as I can tell from having relationships with people of different colors, it's all the same.
That's, yes.
When you're pissed off, you see red, not black or white.
When you're pissed off, and when you're in love, you're in love.
Exactly. All right, we're going to take a commercial break, but I'll be right back with Aaron in just a few moments. Don't go away.
Louis.
Welcome back to Later. I'm here with writer-producer Aaron Sorkin from television's The West Wing. I actually want to talk a little bit about, there's another subject matter that you deal with on the show that you have been vocal about as something that you've personally struggled with. But you have a character who goes to AA meetings. And I find it to be an incredibly brave and I think necessary part of what you do on the show.
Yeah, I think you're referring to, I'm a recovering cocaine addict. I haven't actually been terribly vocal about it, and I ought to be. And I suppose the reason why I'm not, obviously, you want to keep private things private, and I think particularly in show business, there's you feel a bit of a sense if you don't want to make public hay out of something like this. But there is a character on the show, Leo McGarry, who's played so fantastically by John Spencer, who is a recovering alcoholic and an addict. And, that's actually a good example. We were talking before about you set out a certain goal and you arrive at this great place. You didn't even know you were going there. And Leo's addiction is really not an attempt to dramatize my own experience or even do anything sensational. It was simply this, sometimes you get a small piece of information and it's so interesting to you, you want to do something with it. You watch it blossom into something. And the information that I got was that, most AA meetings, and there are AA meetings everywhere, 24 hours a day. You and I could find one within 2 blocks of here, and you and I could walk right in. They don't take your name at the door. You don't need a reservation. You don't need to show identification when you're walking in. You go in and you take a seat, except for a couple. There are special secret AA meetings, for instance, for commercial airline pilots. There are special secret AA meetings for surgeons. There are special secret AA meetings for a number of judges, for a number of people whom, if their anonymity was ever compromised, it would be devastating for them. And so I wondered to myself, simply, given the number of people who are recovering alcoholics and addicts these days, is there somewhere in the basement of Washington, D.C., a special secret AA meeting for very, very high-level government officials? And if there isn't, I'm going to make one up, because there certainly could be. And and that's how Leo became an alcoholic and an addict on the show. And it was something we got 5, 6, 8 fantastic episodes out of, dealing with his outing as an alcoholic and an addict.
Well, it's fascinating to me that you deal with it, because I have a very dear friend who's a huge fan of the show, and he's successful and you know, just a normal, regular, you know, white collar person, right? And he said to me, he said, you know, one of the things that's so cool about this is that you realize that you don't have to walk into these meetings and go, oh my God, you know, here I am, and I've really. No, it happens to regular people.
It happens to everybody. Believe me, this disease doesn't discriminate against rich, poor, black, white, male, female, successful, unsuccessful. It doesn't care who you are. It was that story arc on The West Wing ended with Leo forgiving the young woman who had ratted him out in the first place. It was kind of an episode about being a good teacher, and in a 4 or 5 minute scene where he did his best to explain to her what it means to be an alcoholic or an addict. They reach an understanding, and he forgives her, and he gives her her job back. She's a very, very low-level staffer across the street who's frightened to death to be in the chief of staff's office, and he gives her her job back, and it was the moment after which I received the most negative mail on the show, more negative even than from people all across the country saying that girl's ass stays fired.
You know. Okay, I was captivated with Sports Night. Now I got to ask you, just you don't have to get into specifics, but might we see the show somewhere else?
I won't get into specifics, but you might. You might. There have been a number of cable stations, terrific cable stations, that have stepped up, that have shown a great interest in making more episodes of Sports Night. I and my partner Thomas Schlamy, who directs the shows and is one of the executive producers, and all the other people involved with Sports Night would love nothing more than to make more episodes. And I can't tell you at this point that that's going to happen, but I can tell you that we all want it to happen, and there are a number of people interested in seeing it happen.
Okay, well, we want to see it.
Okay, thanks.
All right, we got to take a break. I hate this part. This is where we get interrupted. We're going to come back with Aaron, and we're going to talk a little bit about Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson, and the making of A Few Good Men. So stay with us.
Natalie, desperate times. Yes.
I know. I don't need to be mean, but welcome back to Later. We're here with film writer, producer Aaron Sorkin. And before we go to the later list, which is something that we like to do around here, I want you to just talk a little bit about A Few Good Men and just what it was like for you. This was like your first big film.
It's my first film of any kind. The play A Few Good Men, which I wrote the play. I wrote the play on cocktail napkins. I graduated from college. I moved to New York. I was working as a bartender at the Palace Theater, where La Cage aux Folles was playing, which is a great survival job if you're a struggling writer. And you work from 7:30 to 8 when the audience is coming in, and then you're off during the first act until intermission when you work for 15 minutes. And during the first act of La Cage aux Folles, I was writing A Few Good Men on cocktail napkins, and I go home with my pockets stuffed with cocktail napkins and spill them out onto the desk and start copying it all over. And then I was brought up to California to do the film adaptation of A Few Good Men. Everything back then in my life seemed to be going incredibly fast. First of all, my first play opened on Broadway, and it seemed like no sooner did that happen than Nicole Kidman came to see the play and called her husband and said, "You have to come down here. There's a part that you're going to want to play." And the phone rang, and the director, Rob Reiner, said, "Listen, what do you think of Nicholson for the Colonel?" I said, "Nicholson, maybe. We can do better, probably." You know, in the blink of an eye, I was out in California for what was supposed to be a couple of months. I was just coming out here. I never got a place to live. I came out here. Never forget the first table read for the movie. Sitting around the table, and Nicholson's first line is on page 27 of the script, and when he said it, just everybody at the table looked up, because there was just the sense of, that's not somebody doing Nicholson. That was Nicholson who just said that. It was an incredible experience.
Were you pinching yourself under the table?
I was so frightened during that table read. I was so terrified. And then I was sitting in a chair when Jack Nicholson came over to me to talk to me about a word in one of his lines. I can't even quite remember what it was he asked me, but all I was thinking was, Jack Nicholson's asking me something. Either the answer should be very smart or simply yes. It should just be the answer.
Oh my! So you said yes a lot.
I said yes, sir, a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
I did, and then I'm sorry, but I have to say that the film was a couple of months away from opening, and when that happens, there are all sorts of test screenings that you do in front of audiences, and I went with my then girlfriend, not the woman I ended up marrying, to one of these test screenings. And it was one of our first dates, I think, and there was going to be a party afterwards. And the folks from the movie, the cast was going to be there. And on the way to the party, I had said to her, "Listen, I don't want you to get the wrong idea. I doubt that Jack Nicholson is even going to remember who I am. You know, he was only shot on the movie for 2 weeks, and it's not like I was on his radar screen in a big way. And this is Nicholson, and he's been living for a little while now. And so I don't want you to think that, you know, he's going to hug me as I walk in the door or anything like that." As I'm saying that, we walked in the door, and the first scream from the other side of the room was, "Aaron!" And it's Jack, and he waves me over, and he gives me this big bear hug, and he says, "We're going to be a hit."
Oh, my God.
So it was great. And I thought, honestly, if I had paid him to do that for the sake of my date, it couldn't have been better.
Boy, if you didn't finish lucky at the end of that night, I don't know. Wait, really quickly before we go to a commercial break, one layerless question, and this is like the most
I got to tell you, Deborah in makeup has gotten me terrified about the later list.
No, you're kidding me. It's so easy. I'll ask you one question, because it's the most
Is there calculus involved?
No calculus involved. You're sitting here, you can ask the president one question. What would you ask him?
What are you going to do now?
See, Aaron, that's why you get the big bucks. We'll be right back.